Welcome back to the New Leaf Education course. In the last module, we reviewed the 6 DOT agencies, starting with the immense scale of the aviation sector. We talked about how DOT testing applies to the transit networks and rail systems that move millions of passengers daily. We looked at the maritime industry, where safety-sensitive roles guide massive vessels through crowded domestic waterways. And we highlighted commercial motor vehicles and hazardous materials transport, where large equipment operates at high speeds in immediate proximity to the public. Now we are going to move from who is covered to when testing actually happens. We are not going to repeat the accident history from video 2, and we are not going to repeat the agency history from video 3. The purpose of this video is to explain how the testing system works in practice. By the end of this video, you should be able to name the 6 testing categories, understand why each one exists, and explain how confidentiality and clearinghouse reporting fit into the larger safety system. The DOT built this testing framework as a continuous safety system, monitoring and mitigating risk through every stage of a worker's professional life. There are 6 major DOT testing categories: pre-employment, random, reasonable suspicion, post-accident, return to duty, and follow-up. This timeline illustrates a safety-sensitive worker's career, balancing the priority of public safety on top with the worker's right to confidentiality on the bottom. The categories are designed to intercept specific types of risk at different phases of employment. The first 4 phases address risk during standard employment, before work begins, during active daily duty, after a supervisor observes signs of impairment, and immediately following certain transportation accidents. The final 2 phases handle remediation. They occur after a DOT violation has already happened, mapping the process of returning a worker safely back to duty. Safety-sensitive work requires active prevention and strict accountability. A structured sequence ensures the industry monitors risk instead of simply reacting after a disaster occurs. Managing a compliant, safety-sensitive workforce means understanding exactly how and when to apply these testing categories without violating federal reporting laws. Let's begin with Node 1, pre-employment testing. This happens before a covered employee performs safety-sensitive duties for the very first time. For CDL drivers under FMCSA rules, an employer must receive a negative pre-employment controlled substances test result before allowing that driver to operate a commercial motor vehicle in a safety-sensitive role. The purpose here is baseline safety. The pre-employment process includes checking a worker's prior testing history to verify they are not entering a new role with a hidden violation. If entering a DOT-covered position, do not assume you can begin covered duties until the employer has completed this exact testing and review process. Moving the timeline forward brings us to Node 2, random testing. This occurs during active employment. Random testing must be completely unannounced. Workers are selected through a scientifically valid process where every covered employee in the pool has an equal chance of being selected every time. This chart breaks down the minimum annual random testing rates required by FMCSA in 2026, which sit at 50% for controlled substances and 10% for alcohol. Because the testing is unannounced, a worker cannot safely plan substance use around a known test date, creating strict deterrence. Because the selection is scientifically valid, the employer cannot choose workers based on bias, protecting them. Pre-employment testing establishes a clean baseline. Random testing is the engine maintaining constant, ongoing workforce readiness. Node 3 is reasonable suspicion testing. This is the reactive node during an employee's active duty. It triggers when a trained supervisor observes specific, current, and observable signs that indicate potential impairment. These signs are strictly categorized into appearance, behavior, speech, or body odor. This category relies entirely on observable facts. It cannot be based on a vague feeling. It cannot be based on workplace gossip, rumors, or personality conflicts. The supervisor is documenting observable, safety-related concerns to protect the workplace. They are not diagnosing a medical substance use disorder. Node 4 is post-accident testing. It addresses the sudden, unpredictable nature of transportation incidents.
Many people assume that every single accident automatically requires testing. That is incorrect. Testing depends entirely on the DOT agency rule and the specific accident facts. This decision tree matrix breaks down threshold criteria for FMCSA. Post-accident testing is required after a fatality, or if the driver receives a citation and the crash involves bodily injury or disabling damage requiring a tow. Testing determines if impairment was a factor. It doesn't assign blame prematurely. Timing is critical, especially with alcohol, which leaves the body rapidly. Tests must fall within narrow regulatory timeframes to provide useful safety data. Node 5 is return to duty testing. This node only activates after a worker incurs a DOT drug or alcohol violation. A worker cannot return to safety-sensitive duty simply because a certain amount of time has passed, or because they feel ready, or because they took a non-DOT drug test on their own. The worker must complete a mandatory remediation process directed by a substance abuse professional. This requires an initial evaluation, compliance with recommended treatment, and a final clearance evaluation. Under federal procedure, the return-to-duty drug test comes with a strict constraint. It must be observed. Once the worker successfully resumes safety-sensitive duties, they enter Node 6, follow-up testing. Follow-up testing operates independently from the employer's random testing program. The schedule is dictated by the SAP's plan. The minimum requirement is 6 unannounced, directly observed tests during the first 12 months back. The SAP can mandate testing for up to 5 years. Drivers frequently misunderstand this. Taking a test for the random pool does not fulfill follow-up requirements. They are separate obligations that run concurrently. The return-to-duty process serves as a rigorous, multi-year monitoring sequence designed to guarantee public safety before and after a worker resumes safety-sensitive functions. Below the timeline lies the data governance layer. The test results generated across these 6 nodes are highly sensitive pieces of medical and disciplinary data. Confidentiality dictates that this testing information cannot be casually shared. Releasing a worker's record to a new employer requires written consent, and releasing it to law enforcement requires a valid legal mandate. This protects workers from unnecessary disclosure and reputational harm. But confidentiality does not mean a violation legally disappears, nor does it allow a worker to hide an active infraction. For CDL drivers under FMCSA rules, violations must be reported to the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, a federal database repository specifically built to track CDL program violations. This data flow shows the gap the clearinghouse closes. Before it existed, a driver with an unresolved violation could potentially leave one employer and apply somewhere else. The clearinghouse catches that violation data and syncs it across the network. For CDL drivers, a DOT violation transcends internal company HR records. It directly affects their federal status and their legal ability to perform any safety-sensitive functions. The system operates on a necessary equilibrium. Strict confidentiality rules protect the individual worker from arbitrary harm, while mandatory clearinghouse reporting protects the public from hidden risks. Before you move on, take a moment to pause the video and write down the 6 DOT testing categories. Next to each category, write one sentence explaining exactly when that specific test occurs. You have now completed Module 1 of the New Leaf education course. In this module, you learned how DOT drug and alcohol testing developed over time. We started with the pre-federal testing era, moved through the creation of the Department of Transportation, reviewed the federal drug-free workplace movement, looked at major transportation tragedies, and connected those events to the Omnibus Transportation Employee Testing Act and 49 CFR Part 40. You also learned the 6 DOT agencies, the 6 major testing categories, the difference between DOT and non-DOT testing, and why confidentiality and required reporting both matter. DOT testing functions as a public safety system built around safety-sensitive work, federal oversight, standardized procedures, and accountability. In Module 2, we will focus on the FMCSA Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse, what it is, what it shows, who reports to it, and how it affects CDL drivers. Safety is the point.